United States, our actions have brought speed, substance, and strength to the entire spectrum of engagement. In my conversation with President-elect Donald Trump, we agreed to keep building on these gains in our strategic partnership. Russia is an abiding friend. President Putin and I have held long conversations on the challenges that confront the world today. Our trusted and strategic partnership, especially in the field of defense, has deepened. Our investments in new drivers of our relationship and the emphasis on energy, trade, and science and technology linkages are showing successful results. We also enjoy a truly strategic partnership with Japan, whose contrasts now stretch to all fields of economic activity. Prime Minister Abe and I have spoken of our determination to intensify our cooperation further. With Europe, we have a vision of strong partnership in India's development, especially in knowledge industry and smart urbanization. Friends, India has for decades been at the forefront of sharing our capacities and strengths with fellow developing countries. With our brothers and sisters in Africa, we have further strengthened our ties in the last couple of years and built meaningful development partnership on the solid foundation of decades of traditional friendship and historical links. Today, the footprint of our development partnership stretches all across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, India has a long history of being a maritime nation. In all directions, our maritime interests are strategic and significant. The arc of influence of Indian Ocean extends well beyond its littoral limits. Our initiatives of Sagar, security and growth for all, in the region is not just limited to safeguarding our mainland and islands. It defines our efforts to deepen economic and security cooperation in our maritime relationships. We know that convergence, cooperation, and collective actions will advance economic activity and peace in our maritime region. We also believe that the primary responsibility for peace, prosperity, and security in the Indian Ocean rests with those who live in this region. Ours is not an exclusive approach, and we aim to bring countries together on the basis of respect for international law. We believe that respecting freedom of navigation and adhering to international norms is essential for peace and economic growth in the larger and interlinked marine geography of the Indo-Pacific. Friends, we appreciate the compelling logic of regional connectivity for peace, progress, and prosperity. In our choices and through our actions, we have sought to overcome barriers to our outreach to West and Central Asia and eastward to Asia Pacific. Two clear and successful examples of this are the tripartite agreement with Iran and Afghanistan on Chabahar and our commitment to bring online the international North-South transport corridor. However, equally, connectivity in itself cannot overdrive or undermine the sovereignty of other nations. Only by respecting the sovereignty of countries involved can regional connectivity corridors fulfill their promise and avoid differences and discord. Friends, true to our traditions, we have shouldered the international burden of our commitments. We have led assistance and relief efforts in times of disaster. We were a credible first responder during the earthquake in Nepal, evacuation from Yemen, and during humanitarian crisis in the Maldives and Fiji. We have also not hesitated in shouldering our responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. We have increased collaboration on coastal surveillance, wide shipping information, and fighting non-traditional threats like piracy, smuggling, and organized crime. We have also shaped alternative narratives on long-standing global challenges. Our strong belief in delinking terrorism from religion and rejecting artificial distinction between good and bad terrorism are now a global talking point. And those in our neighbors who support violence, hatred, and export terror stand isolated and ignored. On the other pressing challenge of global warming, we have moved into a leading role. We have an ambitious agenda and equally aggressive target to generate 175 gigawatts from renewable energy. And we have already made a good start. We have shared our civilizational traditions to promote harmonious living with nature. We also brought the international community together to create an international solar alliance to harness the energy of sun to propel human growth. A high point of our efforts has been the revival of international interest in the cultural and spiritual richness of India's civilizational stream. Today, Buddhism, Yoga, and Ayurveda are recognized as invaluable heritage of humanity as a whole. India will celebrate this common heritage every step of the way as it builds bridges across countries and regions and promotes overall well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say this in conclusion. In connecting with the world, our ancient scriptures have guided us. Rig Veda says, Ano bhadro kritvo yantu vishwataha. Let noble thoughts come to me from all directions. As a society, we have always favored needs of many over the want of one and preferred partnerships over polarization. We hold the belief that success of one must propel the growth of many. Our task is cut out and our vision is clear. Our journey of transformation begins at home and is strongly supported through our constructive and collaborative partnerships that span the globe. With resolute steps at home and expanding network of reliable friendships abroad, we will grasp the promise of a future that belongs to over 1 billion Indians. And in this endeavor, you will find in India, my friends, a beacon of peace and progress, stability and success, and access and accommodation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
May I now request the Honorable Minister of State, Shri M.J. Akbar, to propose a vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to move a vote of thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister of India. He has just, before you, laid out the ideological vision as well as the intellectual framework of a transformed and transforming foreign policy that meets the requirements of a fast evolving and changing India. In essence, all foreign policy has to be an extension of the national interest. And the national interest at the moment has clearly encapsulated by the Prime Minister himself is a vision and a search for prosperity. That was the message of the 2014 election, and that message is epitomized in the personality, the philosophy, and the policies of the Prime Minister himself. The two words that he used most often in his speech were peace and prosperity. They were repeated often and often and reflected the great and intense desire. But as he said, our vision of prosperity is a shared vision. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and Sab extends across the harmony that we look for. But this much I think we must make clear. While we want peace, we want the peace of a garden, not the peace of a graveyard. And today the threat to peace, without peace there is no prosperity. The threat to peace comes from a big beast. We think of big powers. That's one of the subjects of our deliberations over the next 2 days. But one of the many big powers which has emerged, we don't quite recognize it, is this power of terrorism, a big beast, an evil that is threatening turbulence across areas, which uses fear as the stimulus for devastation and chaos. We are on the frontiers of the war against terrorism, and we are in this process being led by a man who actually brought this theme out consistently from the very beginning of his mission to serve, which is 2.5 years ago. And what he repeated and said has today become a part of the recognition that the world has given. Thank you very much, sir, for providing such a stimulating beginning to our deliberations. We have begun really at a very high point. Now it is for the rest of us to try and reach the levels of the starting point. Thank you.
Can I request you all to remain in the room as the Prime Minister leaves?